Hi, I don't normally make videos, but when I do, they're for teachers. Hi teachers, it's Dorina Sackman, your 2014 Florida Teacher of the Year and your national finalist, now working for Orange County Public Schools for professional development. And I am so excited to do this professional development for you for about 15 to 20 minutes discussing the core of the matter, teachers' voices on Florida standards. We'll be discussing VAM, Florida standards, digital instruction, as well as teacher advocacy and your voice. So, we're first going to start talking about the VAM, basically adding value to student education. What I'd like to discuss with you right now, and this is just the positives and the negatives of VAM, so that you as a teacher could actually understand it a little bit better before you go into your instruction. On the Florida Department of Education, you're going to see, under Florida's value-added model, an incredible file in which you can do an entire overview and see what they are talking about when it comes to the standards, teacher evaluation, and how, in fact, the value-added model is measured with an example. And sometimes it can be very confusing, but if you truly look at this, you can see exactly what we are trying to do as educators. We're trying to educate our students so that they have performance and growth. And when you see it through this model, through this system, you can understand it. As teachers, we do see the pros and cons, and as teachers, we must advocate for ourselves and our students, as well as our profession. And for us to understand the value-added model is extremely important. So I do encourage you to read everything that you can about these value-added models and what is given to you in the Department of Education. Another part of the Florida Department of Education website that's a wonderful resource for you are the frequently asked questions that are about the VAM. All you have to do is just look up FLDOE VAM, and it'll show up immediately. So you can scroll down even further and you have a really good amount of information. Because when you fuel yourself with the knowledge about it, then you can advocate for us as educators. So as you can see, there's an entire list of all things about VAM, examples, videos, articles on both sides of the spectrum. The other part of that's really important is to see another side of it, others' perspectives. This is an article that was written actually by Pearson, and I know as soon as you hear Pearson in publishing, you think it's quite biased. But actually, this incredible article that I think is a wonderful resource for all teachers, it will give you a very good overview of the pros and cons of the teacher evaluation system. It gives you also a very good example of the features of the different models, the advantages, disadvantages, and some examples. This will really educate you on what it is all about. Once you can come up with this information, then you'll probably have a lot of questions. That's when you can do further research. And I think that's really the big point about all of this. You have to educate yourself on VAM. It'll fuel you with your knowledge and it'll arm you with a voice. You have to understand also that Florida Department of Education makes the choices, but teachers are the voices. So ask questions, empower yourself through the inquiry. And also, we need to find the positive in everything. Yes, actually, once you read this information and truly get some knowledge about the VAM, you will see that there are positives to it, but it must be blended with other evaluative measures. It can't just stand alone. Just like teachers, we can't just stand alone. So once we have that and it's blended, I think that would be a wonderful first resource for us to see what we can do to empower each other and to empower our profession. So I'm going to go a little further to show you your VAM score. It doesn't define you as an effective educator. It is merely a tool like a Marzano or a Danielson. And it assists in how we can grow and develop better teachers. We all have room to grow, as long as it is done in a non-biased way in which our teachers and our administration come together with fidelity and true professional development on how we are evaluated. You see, for teachers, we know that our relationships with our students, our passion for our subject matter, and our love for our craft, that is a true teacher. And that's something you always have to remember this year. Truly, just teach. This is the VAM formula. Just wanted you to know that. Everybody gets very confused about it. And this is how they break it down with these lovely boxes to tell you exactly what each and every part of that formula is. No, I'm not expected to try to solve this formula, nor am I asking anyone else to do it. But it is out there. But if you see what goes into the value-added model, you can have a better appreciation as to why they're creating this formula. How to solve it, I'll leave that up to the math people. But really, what matters most are the students. No matter the formulas, the best formula is the relationship that you will have and establish with your students this year. Yes, there'll be rigor and relevance using our standards, but the most important thing is that relationship with those kids. Once you have them forever. So we talked about the VAM. Now let's get to this. The standards are out there as well. As soon as you hear it in the news and you hear all these things and you really say, oh my gosh, and again, it has this negative connotation. And we really, as educators, need to truly be on the positive, and we need to think positively about everything that we're doing. Here are some resources for you for understanding the Florida standards. You can look on FLDOE, and you can also look on these wonderful sites. An example would be this, Achieve the Core. This is a great resource for any teacher that truly wants to know what's going on, how can I implement it in my classroom, and how this is going to affect my instruction. You simply just put in what your position is, put in what you're interested in, and your grade. It will give you all these incredible tools to help you educate yourself about the standards, know the standards like that, and how you can implement the standards in your classroom with fidelity, with rigor, and relevance. This is one of my favorite sites. So we'll go back to another site, which of course is one of my favorite things, and I was featured on it, so maybe that's why I love it so much. But it's the Teaching Channel. And you will be able to see 370 videos that will assist you as an educator about the Common Core Florida standards. And the final one is CCSSO. It's the Council of Chief State School Officers, who really give you a wonderful insight on what Common Core is all about, what the next steps are, the Florida standards, how they differ, and the different resources that you can use as an educator to empower yourself. And why is this so important? Well, there are some positives and some negatives, again, that people will discuss about the curriculum, especially with the implementation of the new FSA, which is the Florida Standards Assessment. Is this aligned? Are we doing the curriculum and we're doing the standards this year? We don't even know what test it is. Well, I'm nervous. Is that going to really match up with what I'm doing? VAM, assessments. Is that really why you're teaching? We have to remember the why. Why you teach in the first place. You teach because of the love of your profession, your subject, and those students. You know that's why you do it. So we shouldn't worry about the assessment as much as are they understanding what we are teaching them through the standards. That's what we should focus on every single day. Celebrate those small victories. Negativity seems to always seep through classrooms when it comes to the Common Core. As educators and teacher leaders, we really need to know that kids suffer if we actually show that. So no matter your opinion, unless it's a Socratic debate that you're going to have in like a 10th grade English class, it's really not an issue for students to have. Just saying. And next, what is so great about the standards and how it impacts our curriculum? Well, there's no question there's increased rigor. We know that. But it also creates higher standards, not just within the schools and the state, but it actually does it within yourself. As an educator implementing the Florida standards early on, about 2.5 years ago, I realized I challenged myself as an educator. The expectations are so much higher, and that's good because the rigor is there. Once again, the relevance. I know they're buzzwords, but I'm using them because they're real, because these students really do deserve a high standard of education. And now that's what I give them. I don't settle for anything less, nor should our kids. And then, of course, what happens? We get kids thinking. But most importantly, we get kids thinking in a different way, think outside the box. But no, we empower them to empower themselves using the standards in our curriculum. And what we do is we get them thinking for themselves so that they don't just wait for an answer and say, am I going to get this right on a test? It's something that's going to stay with them. And the retention of knowledge, isn't that what knowledge is all about? Isn't that what education is all about? Just retaining the knowledge that you have and taking it with you. And of course, a guide. The standards themselves for our curriculum is a guide, and it fosters creativity. Some people say, oh, it hinders creativity. It fosters it. I know in my classroom in English Language Arts for English language learners and AVID, it allowed to give me a platform or a baseline of what I had to do. And then from there, I utilized my own creativity. What a great way in which we can express ourselves so much more. But know that there are so many resources, as we just mentioned, but be careful. Just because it says Florida standards or just because it says Common Core, Those are words that people use to sell their product. You have to make sure you know what those standards are before you go into possibly purchasing something under a grant or for your school. It's very important that we know that. But really, how does the standards impact our students? Those pictures just say it all. They think, and they think more about education and the future. We want children to say, oh, I want a future. I want to be educated. We've done our job if we do that, and we can get them assessments, VAM, standards. It's about educating our children to love education. So the core standards, as we talk about them, where's the teacher in all of this? Here's a quote that I saw in Washington State. No more valuable voice exists in education than that of the teacher. Teachers are the most trusted voices by parents, the public, and opinion leaders when it comes to what's happening in the classroom, what's working and what's not. Teachers are the leading voices as our state implements college and career-ready learning standards and assessments. I encourage other educators to lend their voice to this issue, but also to educate the public and spark good conversation and debate. That's where the teacher's role in is all of this. The voice of debate and conversation about what's working and what's not in our classrooms. We're the ones that know. So a teacher's perspective, an example is for a teacher to speak out using a blog or being invited to speak in a blog. A very good colleague of mine who happens to be the Teacher of the Year for Missouri, my friend Jamie Manker, wrote this wonderful article from a teacher's perspective. Why not you? Why don't you talk about what's going on in your classroom, what's working, what's not working? Your voice is your pen, and it's a very powerful tool. Here's another example, and these are teachers' perspectives on the Common Core, or the Florida Standards. So these are wonderful resources, again, great articles and great pieces that you yourself can do in professional development in your schools. Another example over here is one of my favorite. It's called Teach Plus. When you go to Teach Plus, it shows videos about how it's being used, how the Florida Standards or the standards are being used in other classes, and really what's working and what's not. There's lesson plans attached, very similar to the teaching channel. My last one, of course, is Teaching the Core. This is a teacher who decided to buy the domain Teaching the Core, and he talks about a non-freaked out approach to the Common Core literacy. Now, Common Core literacy, Florida Standards literacy. All of it is so similar, you should know the differences, and when you do in your specific grade levels as well, you will see that all of this is a wonderful way to help you on how you cannot be freaked out by the Common Core and educate yourself with the Florida Standards. Do you blog? I think it's important. Do you talk about what's going on in your school every day? You have your voice, and your voice is your pen or your computer. It's amazing how much you can learn and the professional development you can gain through blogging. Do you have a Twitter account? Not a personal Twitter account, but a teacher Twitter account. For me, I have never had more incredible debates and conversations than in 140 characters and articles that I found on Twitter. I highly recommend it. Do you have your own website, whether it's your teacher website from your school or your own website that discusses education? That's where your voice can be heard. And that's how we become leaders. We all are teacher leaders. But the true word of teacher leadership is defined by those who advocate for our profession and for our students. As we're moving forward with technology, it's important that we put this in our classrooms as soon as possible, fairly and evenly, so that we get that equal education. How do we do this? Well, we need to maintain a balance by having a hybrid course. What do I mean by hybrid course? Well, we all know that you cannot replace a teacher. You have to personalize and humanize the actual education feeling or experience, because a teacher and a student, the way that they interact is so much different than just learning it on, for example, Khan Academy or just an online course. A hybrid course will allow that balance. Unfortunately, though, if it's just digital instruction, we lose the beauty and the art of the profession of teaching. Teachers should be able to transfer face-to-face strategies to online design. That's something that's very important with digital instruction, again, to humanize the actual experience. It should be welcoming, your visual aids, your assessments, have discussions, and of course supplemental materials, all using the Florida Standards. And it's very important that we do this because it needs to feel like it's a classroom, or else students will just get it done. Have you ever done that in professional development? I know, because I'm writing new professional development after feedback from teachers. And it's all about, I just need to get it done and pass and move on. That's not learning, that's just finishing a task. See, technology should not be an addition to your curriculum. It should be embedded within your curriculum. And as a teacher, having that hybrid and that balance will create these lifelong learners. Now, I have this picture of Mr. Khan from Khan Academy there because he has a pretty incredible TED Talk where he discusses the importance of digital instruction. Then I also want you to see the flip side of a reaction to this TED Talk from this particular blogger and digital instructor. It is the pedagogy of the lecture model and Khan's emphasis on how to complete the mathematical procedures he's explaining instead of the conceptual framework behind those procedures. The why of education, that is at the heart of the criticism. It's the why. Why are we in our classrooms every day? If we think about that, then you will see that the balance of digital instruction and humanizing and personalizing education with a teacher in front will be the wonderful future of our technological classrooms. Think about this question for a moment. How can teachers, through their own action, research, or inquiry, take action or initiative to improve student learning and achievement? That should be your essential question for this semester. And see how you really can establish this voice of action via research in your own classroom. Constant learning. That's something that you have to understand as a teacher. I got this, I got this, I got this. Too often than not, we are actually closing our doors and saying, I can do this. Nope, constant learning, feedback, and really educating yourself because there's always room for improvement. Reaching out to others will help us with that improvement. You see, Brené Brown, she's an author who talks about vulnerability and the power of vulnerability. By saying to your colleagues, I don't get this, can you help me? Can I observe your class? Is there something that else you think I should be doing here? Reaching out, finding those mentors, finding that administrator, finding someone in your district where you can actually feel comfortable and say, I need help, because that really is the constant learning and the growth that you need. Vulnerability makes a phenomenally effective teacher. Effective PLCs. A lot of times we'll be in our PLCs and we don't have enough time. You might, as a teacher leader, want to suggest ways in which we can have effective PLCs in our schools. One of the greatest ways is by using technology like Voxer, Twitter, and video conferencing, Safari Montage, wonderful ways in which we can actually have our own time but still gain knowledge and truly learn from each other in our PLCs, which of course is all about the kids. Journal. I really want to say that, especially some of you who are interested in going back to school, dissertations are already done for the teachers who have actually journaled about their students. Even just a few little snippets at the end of the day to talk about what worked and what didn't at the end of your lesson plans can go such a long way. The next thing is a mindset. You really have to think about your mindset and how you feel. There's a wonderful book that our Commissioner of Education talks about, mindset. Teacher leadership, this is a big thing. You are the professional development, from technology to writing to mathematics to thinking maps, because your own research in the classroom is professional development for another teacher, especially new teachers. You have to really advocate to say, I can do this professional development. Here are some books that were recommended by the 2014 State Teachers of the Year. These are wonderful pieces in which you can really feel teacher leadership, learning, professional development. There are so many books out there that are great that also now have responses. So an example would be Ruby Payne's book, but then Kunjufu actually does a wonderful response to Ruby Payne. So now you're getting both sides, different thoughts and perspectives. And I think that that's really what makes us the voice of action, the ones who really can research and constantly learn about our students through educating ourselves through these books as well as our own experiences. And we can see both sides of everything. I think that's a wonderful way in which we can increase our teaching for our kids. And I'm going to say it again, Twitter. This is actually a little feed of why people tweet. And it really is true. These hashtags of EdChat, Florida Chat, Urban Chat, ESOL chat, all these wonderful chats in which you have discussions and articles, and it's non-stop professional learning communities, or PLNs, professional learning networks. With this and understanding where the teacher voice comes in and action in your own classroom, we'll turn to advocacy, an empowered voice. What does it mean to be a teacher advocate? What does it mean to be a teacher leader? Well, once again, we go back to that quote, but a smaller version of it. No more valuable voice exists in education than that of the teacher. We are the voice. And sometimes when our children don't have them, we are the voices for our students. So we have to think about that. What is it that you believe in? Well, you have to think of 3 platforms. What platforms, if you were to advocate right now for the 3 things, what would it be? For myself, it's equal education for all children, regardless of socioeconomic, linguistic, or any educational background. There's my 1. Second is teacher leadership. Absolutely. And my 3rd, haven't worked on it yet. We need to have 30-second elevator speeches about every one of them. Because once we have that, we can engage other people in that discussion, and then we get further information about it. Stand up for what you believe in for our kids and for our profession. And we can do that by seeking out organizations that also believe in your cause. You can join organizations, and then you can blog and tweet and learn and have PLNs, and it becomes this wonderful web of community and professional development for yourself, so that you can increase your ability as an educator to effectively reach students of all ages and all backgrounds. And of course, ESET 2. I don't know if you know anything about ESET 2. This is an article that you can go on which discusses it by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. If your district was in ESET 2 in the conference this past August, then this might be something that you're interested in which the teacher goes out and does professional development and has this conference which is all teacher-led and discusses the importance of leadership and what teachers can do to advocate for our profession, our subjects, and our children. So, teacher leaders, and what does that mean? Well, there's another wonderful way that you can see things, which is standards. Teacher leader standards. They're not the Marzano and the Danielson domains. There are 7 domains which will help you to become a teacher leader even more than you already are. We're natural leaders anyway, aren't we, as educators? Take a look at to see all the domains and what they mean. Because too often than not, as educators, we are sitting there climbing this hierarchy, this corporate ladder. And in actuality, education should be lattice, a lattice work in which everyone has a role to play. If we think of it that way, ladder is just climbing. Teacher to lead of my department, to CRT, to dean, to assistant principal, to principal, and then you move on. Or what about the teacher that wants to stay in the classroom but wants to be that leader to assist other teachers? That's what a teacher leader is about, that lattice, not that ladder. And these domains really help you with that. We covered a lot of topics today, and those topics are so important for the future of our education system here in Florida. So gain the knowledge, study them, understand VAM and Florida standards, and digital instruction, and teacher voice and advocacy and research in the classroom. With all of those things, you can empower yourselves and our profession. Gain that knowledge and believe in what you're studying. Believe, the acronym that I have for every single teacher, so that we can continue to truly advocate for our students and ourselves. BELIEVE. Be the educators who lead to inspire and empower via excellence. May we all continue to educate, to connect, and to collaborate, so we may all believe. Thank you.